The Game Boy was revolutionary. It took gaming on the go and it had some killer games to boot. The only real problems with the system was that it wasn't exactly pocket friendly, and you couldn't see the screen if you had no external lighting. This is often riffed on, but it seems a pretty glaring issue with the system, and viewing the Game Boy games through a modern lens really paints the experience in a different light. But regardless, the games were solid, and Nintendo's first-party offerings were quite remarkable, all things considered. Mario's Picross, Donkey Kong Land, Metroid II, Link's Awakening, and Pokemon Gold and Silver demonstrated that great products can come in compact sizes, if you consider the OG Game Boy to actually be compact, that is. The experiences of these games may have been limited by hardware, but their design was top-notch, meaning that they continue to see relevance in later years, with Metroid II even getting a full remake treatment for the 3DS in 2017. But the idea of remaking the game was much older than that. With the original Game Boy releasing back in the early 90s, Retro Studios had considered remaking the game as early as the mid-2000s. Ben Sprout, an artist with Retro Studios, posted on his WordPress blog in 2009 in response to a Metroid II fan remake of the game being released online, stating, "I've always thought it would be awesome to remake Metroid II. A group of us at Retro even discussed doing it as a side project at one point. Nothing ever came of it, though I still think it'd be fun to remake it as a 3D side-scroller." Another name which appears in Metroid II's credits is Dylan Cuthbert, widely recognised for his work as the main programmer on the original Star Fox released for the Super Nintendo. In Metroid II, he receives a name drop under the Special Thanks section, which, according to Cuthbert in a 2016 interview, is thanks to the work he did assisting the team, providing programming advice, and helping with the game's optimization while he was working on his own title, X, also released for the Game Boy. Speaking of which, X is an important game in and of itself. In order for Dylan to create X, his team at Argonaut had to create their own Game Boy development kit, a task that was not so simple to achieve. According to Dylan, "We hacked together a Game Boy development kit with a camera pointed at the Game Boy. They'd gotten it into circuit printing and were printing the circuit boards in this bath full of acid. We're not certain, but X may well be the only game that came to be, partly thanks to a bathtub full of acid." Our next Game Boy title is Mario's Picross, a great little puzzle game which stood the test of time. This is another Nintendo title that had a whole bunch of changes when it was brought to the West. These included a number of changes to the puzzles, altering what the player must draw out on the Picross boards. One of these was the alteration for a puzzle featuring a picture of a cocktail drink, which was changed into that of a Boo character from the Mario series, essentially changing Boos into a Boo. It seems Nintendo's main focus was on removing references to alcohol, like with another puzzle that was changed from a glass of wine into a hat, or a mug of beer that was turned into a crow. References to the Buddhist religion were also removed by placing a Buddhist bell with some garlic. A similar change happens with what seems to be a Buddhist guardian, Neo, being swapped out with chili peppers. References to Japanese culture were also changed to more universally recognized images, with the removal of a Japanese tea kettle for a much more recognizable burger, and the change of a hand drum and yokai to popular animals. Another puzzle was changed to remove a cigarette, which is a surprising image to include in the first place, considering it's a game for all ages. Other changes include a toy puzzle having been turned into a unicorn, and despite efforts to distance the game from religious iconography, a fan puzzle was turned into an angel. We also just wanted to quickly say that we're giving away a Nintendo Switch OLED edition on our second channel. There's details on that in the description. And we're also moving a lot of the sort of trivia you'll find in these extra videos over to TikTok, so be sure to give us a follow using the links in the video description. Now, back to the trivia. When it comes to creating a new title for the Game Boy, it makes sense to work on a game specifically designed for pocket adventures, with inspirations coming from games on home consoles. However, while Donkey Kong Land wound up being an entirely unique game in its own right, the original plan was for the game to be a straight-up port of one of the SNES's most graphically impressive titles, Donkey Kong Country. Programmer Paul Mahachek, however, managed to convince higher-ups at Rare that a new, original title would make more financial sense, saying, Whenever anyone asked me to convert a console game onto Game Boy, I expressed the opinion that we'd be better off writing a new game in the same vein, and that the extra resources to do that wouldn't be much greater than for doing a port, whilst not limiting your market and reducing its size to those people who hadn't just bought the console game. It was a point of view I expressed in 1994 when I was asked to port DKC and instead wrote DKL for Game Boy. This was also a sentiment that Cranky Kong would get behind, as Donkey Kong Land's manual expressed the whole game was made after Donkey Kong, and Diddy Kong had a bet with Cranky that they could have fun even without fancy graphics and modern music. Despite this point, however, the original Donkey Kong Country was given a port to the handheld's mid-generation upgrade, the Game Boy Color, albeit a whole 5 years after Donkey Kong Land. Another one of Donkey Kong Land's secrets is that the game was originally going to feature a new animal buddy called Rambunctious. Little is known about what this little fellow could do, and why he never made it into the game, just that they were, a ram. Maybe they were just a little bit sheepish. Hearing from developers who worked on our favourite games gives us some great insight into game creation, a job which for many may seem like a dream come true until you find yourself on the other side. The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening was a game that certainly delivered joy to many players, but in the files from the Giga Leaks a couple of years ago, a development note from one of the game's programmers revealed some more sentiments around their work at Nintendo over the years. Left by programmer Kazuaki Morita, the note titled Bearded Uncle goes on to talk about his experience working with Nintendo and his thoughts as he moves forward in his career. It reads, "I think there are jobs game developers will never forget, in the same way that people who fish remember their first catch regardless of its size. For me, it's Super Mario Bros. It had a huge 32 kilobyte programming area for the time, and I packed in nearly that much. It was a big fuss even if you had a few free bytes. Then the Infinite Lives, the Minus World, I think the word tricks started being used around this time. I'm relieved they're not always called bugs. It's been about 8 years since then, and I've been involved in various other games, but as I get older, I feel my head is spinning and my memory is weakening. However, I think that my slyness has been only further enhanced. It is often said that a programmer's life is up to 30 years long, but that's just a social custom, saying it happens because you don't have to work, when really it's that you are unable to work. And I think I might quit this job if I feel I've reached my limit, since there's no such thing as a programmer who cannot program. You may be pleased to hear that Kazuaki would stick with Nintendo for many years after Link's Awakening was released, mostly sticking to work on the Zelda franchise as a programmer, though in recent years taking on more roles as a supervisor, possibly starting to feel his age when it comes to his programming tricks. What would a variety of Nintendo games be without the mention of Pokemon? Pokemon Gold, Silver and Crystal came after Red and Blue, so players were of course expecting some riveting new features to their grand adventure. It turns out that there was a feature set to change the game's immersive experience, giving the player a sense of being in the Pokemon world, but it was removed before the game's final release. A fully functional feature that allowed the player to name their mother. This function was included in the data of the Space World 97 demo of the game, which offers the choice of calling your mother Mother, Mama, Mommy, or the option of giving her the name of your choice. A curiosity around this data takes place during the demo's Pokemon catching tutorial, however, in which the player's name is copied to the same location in the game's RAM as the mother's name is stored, suggesting that by the time Nintendo had finished creating the game's tutorial, the mechanism of naming the mother was already planned to go unused. Another bit of interesting content can be found within the game's data. Interestingly, all 26 forms of Unknown have shiny variants, but only the Unknown that are shaped like an I and a V can be shiny. This is, by complete coincidence, due to both how Unknown forms and shininess are dependent on IVs. This means that there are 24 forms of Unknown which have unused shiny variants. Did you also know that the Banjo-Kazooie games have many differences in their Japanese releases? Or that Rockstar asked EA to remove references to GTA from the Simpsons game? For more facts about platformers, check out the video on screen. Apologies if this voiceover is a bit rough and ready. I am feeling under the weather today. My throat is so sore. That is all.